What up, y'all? We back again with another episode. Been lacking, only giving y'all an episode a week. Had a lot of personal stuff going on, but hopefully, we back at getting back into a regular routine. Now, of course, I told you with the rebranding, this is more so getting ready to turn into just a lot of red pill stuff over here. And when I say red pill, like I said, I'm red pill in terms of the truth. That's it. We don't have to sugarcoat things, make things to be more than what they are. Call it for what it is. Put the accountability on both sides in terms of who should be accountable for what in the situations, or somebody should be solely accountable for what is going on in the situation. But from here on out, like I told you, this is going to be what this is. And I'm doing it mostly in part to help a lot of men, like I said, get better with relationships, get better with holding yourself accountable in these relationships. Because a lot of the problems we deal with in relationships are because we're not honest with who we chose to partner with. We're not able to hold people accountable that we partnered with. And because we don't want to be alone, or we enjoy her aesthetics, she might have a fatty, she might be heavy up top, might be both. And therefore, you look at it and it's just like, hey, man, I'm willing to accept a lot of these things as long as I can keep her. But you have to understand, you don't own her. And the second she gets bored, she's going to leave you. And again, like I said, you'll come back to me in red pill rage, asking for advice. Then you'll run across a few other people who are they're still in red pill rage. They never leave out of red pill rage. So they're going to tell you everything that they're feeling. They're going to tell you, hey, yo, man, screw her. You can do better. You don't need her. You need to figure these things out. All women are the same. A lot of issues, like I said, you have to understand when you get into a relationship, the death of the relationship is certain. It's guaranteed. Like I said, either she's going to die, you going to die, or somebody's going to exit. But one day, the relationship will end. So none of this is ever going to be forever. You're going to have to first walk into that and accept that. The second part of all of this is you're going to have to say what? Unconditional love does not exist. That's BS. That's a fairy tale. That's a fantasy. And if someone tells you I love you unconditionally, you probably need to start looking for your next exit. Because that's somebody who loves you more than life itself. That's someone who will allow you to walk all over their heart, break their heart, and do whatever you want to them. Now, that may sound good in the beginning, but there'll come a point when he or she is fed up and you end up on a show like Snapped or 48 Hours or 2020 or a Dateline. Because it's going to end tragically when you deal with somebody like that. Because someone who loves you unconditionally does not love themselves. Because if you love yourself, you understand there's conditions to how much I can love you because I do love myself. If you love yourself, you could never buy into unconditional love. Because unconditional love means I have to love you beyond what you do to me. And I have to always accept that, which means I'm willing to let you hurt me and walk all over me in the process to make you happy and continue to love you. So we'll still do news articles here and there, but there'll still be a red pill spin on it. Like I said. But this comes from a 42-year-old wife who's married to a 44-year-old man who does a lot of pillow talking with his mother. You have to understand, be it male to male relationships, female to female relationships, female to male relationships. When someone entrusts you with information and says, hey, yo, don't tell anybody this, you owe them to do that. Second, you violate that. You have to understand at that point what? That person is capable of doing that. So now, if you bring them back into the fold, you do need to now understand there's certain information I can give them, but if I give it to them, I'm understanding this information could leave this circle and get outside of this circle. Once you accept them back in, you need to be accepting them back in to understand that's a possibility. You're only kidding yourself if you accept them back in and you say, you know what, I'm going to go off your word. Because they violated the trust already. They've broken that trust tree. They've told other people about your situations that you didn't want out there. And see, that's, again, why I tell you, anything I put on this podcast, I don't really care if anybody knows it. I'm giving it to the public at that point. If it's not on here, then I don't want it out into the public just yet. When I want something out into the public, I'll let the public know. Because the second you give it to the public, or you give it to one person, you say, hey, I'm going to tell my mother about this, or my cousin, or my uncle, or my aunt, or my sister. The second you let it outside your inner circle, that person eventually is going to tell somebody else. Either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But now who they tell, they're going to become even more loose with the information, because the more people who know, the farther removed they are from you. So now it's going to continue to spread. But now everybody going to be putting their own twist on it. So you got to be very careful again, period, even your loved one, about what you tell them, because that's also something I tell you guys. The person who can hurt you the most is the person who knows where all the bodies are. They know all the deep, dark secrets. So again, that's why I also say, I have a conversation with my wife. I've told her plenty of times, there are just certain things about my late teens, early to mid 20s, she doesn't need to know about. And I'll never let her know about it. Because if something goes left, guess what? I don't want her to have to answer for it. Just like there are things she's done I don't need to know about. And it's just like, yo, that was way before you. Why am I entrusting you with some of this information? Because I don't know what she would do with the information. What if she gets upset one day? Or we break up and it's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm telling them this, I'm telling them that. You start to give people power when you bring them too far into your world. So she starts off by saying, we've been married 21 years. We have 2 adult children, 20 and 18. His mother and I do not get along at all. What a surprise. Most women don't get along with the mama's boy's mother. She'll tolerate her because the relationship will end if she doesn't. But they don't like those type of relationships. When we first got together, she was very sweet and kind. But I learned very quickly that she is not to be trusted. When our oldest was born, I had PPD, which is postpartum. Husband was in the army and gone frequently. Which means at this point, like she said, the child was 20. She was 21 at that point. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Because some things that happened back then, she's still carrying on now. So now those things could have been innocent, but because she's viewed them a certain way, be it good or bad, she's carrying those feelings with her now. And there's really no way to start over and start anew with certain relationships. This is why I say you've been married for a while and it's been enough emotional damage inside of that marriage. It doesn't matter if you go to counseling or not. The marriage is usually, or the relationship will die because of death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's been too much done already. So see, we could never cover up all of those paper cuts. So the only way to kind of make it actually work would be to start anew. But you know too much to start anew with the person you're currently married with. So you got to go find somebody else to start anew with. She said her husband was in the army and gone frequently. So I moved back home with my grandparents for help and support. I went to therapy and was put on medication. I also began seeing a therapist twice weekly. During therapy appointments, mother-in-law would watch our oldest, so I did not have time, so I did not have to take him with me. She knew why I was in therapy, as I did not keep it a secret that I was struggling. One day, as I was coming back from a therapy appointment, her neighbor, who I had never met before, came out and asked me how my therapy went. I feigned ignorance and said that I had a meeting with the bank, but the neighbor said that she knew all about my therapy and how sad it was that my son was suffering like this. So, you got a catty neighbor. Because this is where the young lady, now 42, this is where her problem starts at. Because at the point this happens 20 years ago, which is 21, 22 years ago, she's 21, 22 years old. She's not mentally and emotionally capable yet of understanding, hey, that's what older women do. They talk, they share information, they gossip. You don't know how tight that relationship is between his mother, that neighbor. But you hold the mother responsible and you're mad because she put your business out there. But you're also mad because you're ashamed that you have postpartum depression. And it probably also stung that she said what? That my son was suffering like this. Like I said, with my second child, my ex-wife dealt with postpartum depression. Was it something easy to deal with? No, it wasn't. Is it something you just kind of have to deal with? So all you can do is deal with it. You have a mother who really doesn't want to be bothered with the child, always down, always sad, can be happy one second, can be sad the next second. It's kind of like they just walking around in a fog. And the relationship with the husband wife relationship is damaged, even though it was already damaged prior to her suffering from that. But it's also, you watch mother child bond is not happening the way it should happen. So now, at 22 years old for this woman, was she mature enough to be able to accept that? Was she old enough and mentally mature enough to look in the mirror and say, even now you could tell she's still not mentally mature enough in holding herself accountable for, yeah, I feel that way, but I was suffering through postpartum depression. And there was no need to even lie at that point and say I was going to the bank. I was dealing with some bank stuff. If she's telling you she know about it, then it just is what it is. And you say, yeah, it's tough. It's tough dealing with it, but I'm trying to work my way through it. Now, again, this is 2001 when this is happening. 2001, 2002. So again, we also know what? That's not, people weren't accepting of therapy. It still was taboo to have a therapist back then in 2001, 2002. We still was at a point where nobody wanted to say they was going to see a therapist, because it was basically, you was looked at as being crazy and close to a mental breakdown, things like that. So I also get it. We also have to reference and understand what time frame we living in. So she says, I immediately went inside and confronted my mother-in-law about spreading my personal business to strangers. Now, to her, it's a stranger. To a mother-in-law, that's not a stranger. And that's what I'm saying. If that's her best friend, That's how best friends talk. They confide in each other basically about everything. So again, like I said, that's still a 22-year-old and now 42-year-old telling the story, not understanding that, still not grasping that concept. When my husband got home from the field 2 weeks later, I told him what happened, and he called his mom to tell her that she was no longer babysitting our oldest, and if she wanted to see him, she would have to come to us. Now, that's her husband doing all of that because he got caught in the jam. So I'm going to side with my wife on this one. But you have to also understand, if he's a mama's boy, his loyalty will still lie with who? His mother. And the most important part of it all is his mother wouldn't know about this had he not told her about this. So to be honest, he can really only be upset with himself. That conversation with his mother should have been what? Yeah, Ma, you probably shouldn't have told your neighbor that, or whoever that is you told, knowing that she has a big mouth. But that was my fault because she entrusted me with that information. I probably shouldn't have talked to you about that until we had worked our way through this. And then it would probably been fair for me to bring you in and tell you about it. But he didn't do that. Because again, we're dealing with a 22-year-old woman, 24-year-old man. Emotionally, you're just not there yet. You just have to understand that. Told my husband that I would never trust her with anything ever again. A complete overreaction. Because she didn't entrust her with the information to begin with. He did. Nor do I ever want her to know our personal private affairs since she cannot keep her mouth shut. Now I'm with her with that until you get a little further along, which we'll deal with, which is where you can find out this woman's a hypocrite. I thought he kept up his end of this agreement, how wrong I was. Now, she's telling you that his mother is not a stand-up woman. She talks too much. And she doesn't want her to know about her own personal private affairs. She violated her privacy. Now let's get to the next part of this, because this is where the accountability on her part comes in. That last night when he got home from work, his phone kept going off. He was in the shower, so I yelled up that he was getting a lot of texts. Now, that's red flag number one for me. But this is her now setting a scenario up for why she was in his phone. Because if she comes out and says, hey, I was snooping through his phone and I saw this, then she comes off as violating his privacy. She comes off as a hypocrite. So this is why, again, I tell you, you're going to have to be able to look through how things are said. A lot of times the devil is in the details. He was in the shower he was in the shower. So I yelled up, hey, babe, you're getting a lot of texts. He told me to read them to see if it was a work emergency and let him know who was texting. Now, was in the shower, couldn't have been in there another 5 minutes. So whatever that was, even when my wife's phone is going off, she'll get it when she get out. Unless she tells me, hey, yo, I'm expecting a call. If it rings while I'm in the bathroom or whatever, let me know or answer it. But I don't answer her phone. She don't answer my phone. So again, this is why I call BS at, but she needs to set the narrative for why she was in his phone and seen this. He told me to read them to see if it was a work emergency and let him know who was texting. 2 were from work. 1 was from mother-in-law. Now, you have to understand she did not say they was work emergencies. So once you found out they weren't a work emergency, what should you have done? Put the phone down. And even if it was a work emergency, all you had to do was take the phone up to him, knock on the door, it's your husband. Hey, babe, your phone going off. Give him his phone in the bathroom, going about your business. That's why I call BS at on all of this. But because women love to say, hey, I just stumbled upon his text messages. I just stumbled upon, seeing something. He just got an alert and I just happened to see. No, you was looking. And that's cool. Just say it. But you don't have to lie. Don't insult my intelligence. So, two were from work, one was from mother-in-law, his mother. I told him who texted, and he said to read his work text to make sure it wasn't an emergency. How would she know whether it's an emergency or not? And if it was a work emergency, wouldn't they call? Wouldn't you get a couple of phone calls back to back? But to her, this all makes sense at this point. Because what? Most women who hear this, they're snoopers. They're going to always violate privacy. So to them, this all makes sense, but it would justify, as long as the end justifies the means. For women, they don't care how they got the information. They don't care they were snooping. They don't care they violated your privacy. They don't care about any of that as long as the ends justify the means. Now, when the ends don't justify the means, what will happen? Then they'll start crying and saying, hey, yo, I know you caught me doing this and nothing was going on, but the way you move makes me feel so insecure. So this is why I do what I do. No, you just don't respect boundaries. Now, if I'm her husband, this is grounds for divorce for me. I'm out. But, and his two children are old. They're adults at this point, 18 and 20. So I definitely would get out. 44, you still got about 10 to 15, so about 15 good years left of being on the market and enjoying life. But I wouldn't be dealing with a nagging woman like this again. So I told him who texted, as he said, to read his work text to make sure it wasn't an emergency. I clicked on his mother by mistake, since she was the most recent text. Now, I clicked on his mother's text by mistake, since she was the most recent text. Now, even had you clicked on it, you knew you was looking for work text, so then just get out of there. You just slide your thumb back to the left, to the right, however it go, to the left. Get out of there, go to the work text. But you didn't do that. And now you're going to try and BS everybody in here and tell them that you did, knowing you didn't. But let's continue down this rabbit hole you want us to go down, the looking glass. Let's go look through the looking glass. I clicked on his mother's by mistake since she was the most recent text. When I read the message, how advanced is the Parkinson's? My stomach dropped. I scrolled up and saw that he told mother-in-law about my mom's recent Parkinson's diagnosis. So I scrolled up some more. See how she ain't told you nothing about them work texts, though, right? No longer relevant. Why wouldn't he tell his mother that your mother had Parkinson's? That's his mother. Your mother's sick. You're his wife. So all she's doing now is reaching out, being concerned. But what did she say? My stomach dropped when I saw about the Parkinson's. So I scrolled up some more, needed to be nosy. I needed to justify why I'm getting ready to start reading through his phone now. Make it seem good. Because in their head, this all makes sense. Every argument or personal thing we have discussed about money, relationships, kids, all of it, he is telling her behind my back. Now, did he violate? He sure did. If she told him, hey, yo, my man, I don't want you discussing our business with her anymore. Should he have done that? No. But the bigger problem is you shouldn't have made an agreement with your wife like that you couldn't keep. But that's a man trying to serve two masters, his wife and his mother. This is a man who suffers from what? Covert incest. We've had this conversation already. For those who haven't, go back and listen to that episode. Now, if he doesn't have any friends to confide in, then who else would he confide in for advice? If that's the closest relationship he has outside of you about money, relationship, and the kids. If he needs advice about children, who else should he go to but his mother? She's raised him. She has 30 years of experience at this point, 40 years of experience since you guys are 44 and 42. Why wouldn't he go to her for that advice? But she doesn't see it that way. All she sees is what? That woman knows my business. Now, the bigger question is why, if your mother was suffering from Parkinson's, did you tell your husband? Because you told your mother's business. Which is, again, why I say, once you start telling people, you have to understand there's a chain of custody of this information now. And you have to understand, once I give this information to her or to him, there's a chance they're going to tell somebody else. So now, if you don't want this information talked about, then you don't need to share that with your husband. But that just is what that is. Because he showed you already when you was 22 and he was 24 about your postpartum depression, he could not be trusted with that information. He showed you that already. So all of this now you have to take on the chin, even though also you violated his privacy to even know about any of this information. You went through his phone while he was in the shower, which leads me also to think what? Since you're saying you can't trust him, he lied to you. You want out, but this is the reason you want to get out. Either you found somebody else or he's not spending any time with you and you think he was with somebody else. That's why you truly went into that phone. Now, you was able to find something to latch onto now, to scream and yell about. But this is not why you're truly upset. I have not said anything to him about it yet. I just do not know how to say it or even what to say. Now, the reason, well, let's go. I feel so betrayed and disgusted. I do not tell anyone our personal or private business, not even my own family. Yet you're telling us your personal and private business right now. Right now, you're telling us your personal and private business. I have not said anything to him about it yet because you weren't supposed to be in that phone and you know that. This whole letter is BS. This is information you have that you shouldn't have. So now you're waiting for a reason to be able to jap off and spaz out. But if you tell him you went into his phone and saw those texts, I'm almost willing to believe he never told you to look in that phone and read those texts to him. I'm almost willing to believe the normal protocol for that is you take that phone to him if he's in the shower. But you didn't. You went through his phone, which is cool. But admit that and be honest about it. Hold yourself accountable for your actions because you're very pissed about him giving out your personal business, yet you're giving the whole internet your personal business. He just told his mother, we don't know you, yet you're upset about it. You brought it to social media, not him. Yet you're upset about your privacy being violated. So you told the world your mother got Parkinson's, but he couldn't tell his mother that your mother got Parkinson's. And this is, again, fellas, why I tell you, start checking a lot of these ladies at the door with a lot of their misbehavior. And don't be afraid to check out and say, yo, that's a boundary too far you've crossed. I'm out. This is why I tell you when they cross certain boundaries, when you set a boundary, if somebody crosses that, you got to exit and you got to 86 that relationship. You cannot try and rebuild. Because if you rebuild, that's one thing I've known in my 40 years on earth. You try and rebuild with people, they're going to cross another boundary you set because you allowed them to cross that boundary already. So now you reset and you placed another boundary a little farther out. So eventually one day they're going to cross that one too because they know there's no consequences for that. Now, I do not tell anyone our personal or private business, not even my own family. I would never dream of telling anyone about a family member being diagnosed with an illness without discussing it with the family member first and getting their consent. I really do feel so betrayed and I'm very upset. The one person who I trusted more than anyone on this earth has been feeding information to the one person that I do not want to know my personal and private business. What should I say to him? Is there any way to go and get past this? Now, is there any way to go and get past this? Because she's ready to check out. That's all this is about, to be honest with you. And it's like I'll always state, usually when people are ready to get out of a relationship, what they'll start doing is pulling from whatever is going on in the present so they don't really have to deal with what is actually causing the issue. So if it's childhood trauma, or they found somebody else and they don't want to deal with those issues, they don't want to tell you I'm cheating or I found somebody else. So what they'll come to you and say is, hey, I just don't think we clicking enough. We don't communicate enough. We don't go out enough. It's getting stale. It's getting boring. We doing this. I don't like that you do this anymore. That's what they'll hold on to. They just won't say, hey, I just want something new. And I'm attracted to somebody over here. That's why I'm doing this. If you guys get into agreements and you don't yell, she'll come to you and say, though, you always yelling and screaming. You'll say, no, I don't yell or scream. We're just disagreeing. Now, she has childhood trauma that she has to deal with. But because she doesn't want to deal with being sexually abused by a close family friend, a relative, a mother's boyfriend, a stepfather or father, or even just being verbally abused by a mother, since she doesn't want to deal with that, what she's going to do is blame you for how she's feeling in the present moment. It'll just be your fault. Because it can never be her fault, and it can never be the person who's actually causing these issues' fault. She doesn't want to deal with that. You're going to take the blame. But to end this, like I said, the biggest hypocrisy and hypocritical thing about the whole letter is what? I feel so betrayed and disgusted. I do not tell anyone our personal and private business. It is 8 million people in this group who you have told your private business to. And you worried about him telling the woman who birthed him. But you also have to see, he gave a person he gave the information to the one person that I do not want to know my personal and private business. There's an issue between these two women fighting for his love. She's tired of fighting for his love with his mother, so she's ready to go. She's found somebody else. And she's going to lay this at his lap eventually and check out. So, in conclusion, what have we learned here today? What message am I getting across today? A, be accountable for what's going on in your own life. You told him that information, knowing he had already violated your trust 20 years ago. So you can only hold yourself responsible for this situation. Number 2, men, if your wife tell you, don't spread any more business. Women, if your husband tell you, keep this between us, that means this is where this stays. In this trust tree, that's it. In this circle, us two people, this does not leave this circle. If it does, you have violated. And at that point, you must act accordingly. Like I said, if you stay in that relationship, you must then understand, I can't entrust her or him with everything that I'm feeling or everything that I'm bouncing around in my head. Because I can't trust they'll keep it private. The only person you can trust will keep something private that you want private is who? You. And also, lastly, women and men, stop checking each other's phones. You're too old for that. I'm going to keep stating this. The second you need to go check your man, your husband, or your wife, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, the second you need to go check that phone, there is no more trust in the relationship. It's already over. So the second we get to that point, it's time to check out anyway. It's your boy, the Hood Nerd. I'm out.